Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Just as cattle in India are considered sacred and so no one touches them, in the country of South Korea, dogs are used as a source for meat. On today's broadcast, we'll find out about an organization that seeks to stop that.
Sure. My name is Fleur Dawes, and I am with In Defense of Animals.
Where do you work out of then, ma'am? Where's the so-called headquarters of this effort?
So, In Defense of Animals is based in California, in Northern California, in San Rafael, just outside San Francisco. But we run an international operation with sanctuaries in Mississippi, in India, and also in South Korea, where we rescue dogs from the dog meat trade.
Yeah. How did you come upon this concept of rescuing dogs in that manner in the first place? Where did it all start from?
Well, In Defense of Animals has actually been working to rescue dogs from the dog meat trade in South Korea for a very long time. I believe the organization was the first out there. And we got we call it the white dog letter. They went on holiday, they were Korean themselves, and they went on holiday to Korea from the US, and they saw a dog being slaughtered there in a very awful way, and they asked us, is there anything that In Defense of Animals can do about the egregious slaughter of these dogs? And we went over there and investigated, and it turns out that there's actually around 2 million dogs are killed and eaten in Korea every year. That is actually changing. The younger population are increasingly seeing dogs more like we see dogs, as companions, which is a wonderful change. But still, nevertheless, there are millions of dogs being eaten, particularly by the older generation. So In Defense of Animals works to rescue the dogs and put them in loving forever homes in the United States and Canada.
That illustrates the different way that people on the same globe can refer to something, a form of life, in quite different ways. I know people that I associate with have joked on occasion that one of the reasons why we might not like to visit China is because we might not be sure exactly of what we were eating. I'm not sure that I was aware that this went on in other countries like Korea as well.
Yes, there's definitely a different culture around the different kinds of animals who are eaten, and eating dogs happened in Korea mainly as a result of the Great Depression that they had after World War II. So it's actually a relatively recent phenomenon for Korea, at least. But the animals who we decide to eat and the animals who we decide not to eat, who we decide to share our homes with, it's kind of an arbitrary line, and it's based on where we grow up culturally. Many people will argue that a pig is more intelligent than a dog or a 3 or 4 year old child, but we still, unfortunately, we eat them over here. Or a cow is sacred in India, but we are happy to eat them over here. So it's very cultural. Even though it feels abhorrent to think about your animal being eaten, and in fact I do have a dog here who is my sweet companion, and she was going to be eaten. Fortunately, our rescue partners took her out of her cage when she was 6 months old, just before the age when she would be slaughtered. And it's horrible to think that somebody could kill and eat an animal who is now a loving companion for the rest of her life.
Your illustration is a well-taken point that yes, we do have, as you highlighted, know of countries where certain animals are considered sacred or in a special position in society, and so we don't do the same thing with them, or the people who live there don't do the same thing with them than we would. I grew up in the state of Iowa, in the Middle West, for instance, where it is routine to raise cattle and to raise hogs and then turn them into meat products. And most people like me, for instance, who grew up in that society, although not on a farm, nonetheless consider that a routine thing. But I suppose there are other people People in Israel, for instance, where Judaism is the largest religious affiliation, and pork, for instance, is not something, and Muslims too are both against the idea of eating pork, and it's because of the religious value within the spiritual value within their religions that is something that's not clean, so therefore they don't eat it.
Right, exactly. And consider how sweet and playful they are. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting any piglets, but they are incredibly lovely and loving little animals, and very similar to dogs, actually. So it's really a cultural line where we draw it. You know, who we're going to eat and who we're not. But what I would really like to ask your listeners is how they might like to get involved with our campaign. So we do have, it's been a very difficult time for us now, Paul, with COVID has really hit us hard. We've not been able to do all of the transports that we have wanted. So this makes it really difficult because we have dogs who have been rescued and rehabilitated, and they're waiting for their loving forever homes. And we have the homes ready, but we just haven't been able to get them there. They've been stranded by the pandemic. And of course, while they're in our rescue centre, it's prevented us from being able to save more dogs. So it's been a really tough and heartbreaking time for us. So I can't imagine that many of your listeners are planning on flying to Korea. But if you are planning on flying to Korea, or you know anyone who is, ideally directly. So I think your nearest airport would be JFK. I know that's not super near to you, but that is the closest one that does direct flights. If you know anyone, please do get in touch and become a flight volunteer. So if you go to idausa.org/flight volunteer, you will find out all about how to become one. Or if you would consider opening your home to a rescued dog, they make the most amazing companions. And despite all that they've been through, you just wouldn't be able to tell, because they are still the most loving, amazing, forgiving companions you could ever wish for.
Now, as far as the direct flights from Korea is concerned, that I presume is for the safety of the animal, in that there aren't connections to make and therefore landings and then takeoffs again to accommodate during a trip like that?
Right, exactly. So we fly to a number of locations in the US and Canada, but only the ones that have direct international flights, because of that very reason. It makes the journey so much longer if they have to set down, and so much more dangerous, unfortunately, if they have to set down and then get on another flight as well. And you definitely don't want a dog becoming lost baggage. Yeah.
As far as the breeds are concerned, do you see just about any kind of breed that you might see in Korea?
That's a really interesting question. So one of the main dogs who are used for meat over there are the Jindos. So that the Jindo breed is interestingly noted as a national treasure of Korea. So they have this special status, yet at the same time, they're culturally considered as meat dogs because they're a little bit bigger. They're about 50 pounds. And the bigger dogs nowadays are being considered the meat dogs, and then the smaller dogs are increasingly coming into people's homes and being, loved as companions. And of course, that brings a whole different range of problems with the pet trade and breeding and casting off animals into kill shelters. And then what happens is the larger dogs who get abandoned in the kill shelters will often get picked up by the dog meat traders. So they'll go there and quote-unquote adopt these dogs, and in actual fact they're taking them either directly to slaughter or fattening them up for slaughter.
Once again, my guest is Fleur Dawes from an organization that seeks to rescue dogs who would end up as meat in South Korea and home them here in the States. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.